in which you want to present. I think now we should be given 5 to 7 minutes, 5 minutes per presentation.
Yes,
Okay, because today there are 8 of them have expressed their willingness to make presentation. So can we start with 5 minutes for presentation and then discussion and response?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So first of all, I would like to invite Dr. Pooja Saxena Nigamji. You can start with your presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I'll just need a second to start my video. Please let me know if my screen is visible.
It's visible.
Okay, just a minute. I'm sorry, I'll just start yeah. So I think it's in the slideshow mode now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is in a working mode, but it's okay because your font size is big, we can read it. Yeah.
Okay.
No, that was on. Yeah, you can go
Now
again.
it is.
Yeah. I'm trying to put it in the slideshow mode. I don't know why it's not working.
It happened once. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. I'm so sorry. I don't know. Now it's not working. Shall I just keep it this way and continue without wasting time?
Yes.
For everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. I decided to take up the topic of changing role of women in the use of common property resources in the context of urbanization in India. On the theme, I think my video not working? The theme that I chose was environment and sustainability. So given the area of economic analysis, we are basically, the idea was to touch upon the productive resources. And productive resources can be categorized in the field of economic analysis in various ways. One such ways are where we categorize resources which are natural resources. So natural resources can be put into the category of open access resources, common property resources, to name a few, which are very critical, particularly in the area of sustainability and also in the area of preservation of environment. So I took up again, there is some problem. Sorry. Okay, now it's saying resume. I'm so sorry. So common property resources, I'm just defining the common property resources because these are resources which basically are used by a community. So they are resources which cannot be typically put into the category of private ownership or public ownership. So they rest with the community. People use them as community. And the examples of which as defined are put here: community pastures, forests, ponds, river bodies, etc., which are very important. And primarily these resources are based in rural areas. So the problem with common property resources are that unlike other resources, unlike other goods, it's very difficult to categorize them according to one, ownership, who owns them. So it's neither the private sector nor the government. It basically rests with the people who use those resources, so communities. And unlike other goods and resources, it's not possible to exclude others from using it. Or the notion of rivalry, which is very popular in economics, doesn't work here. Thus, what emerges is that the prices for such resources cannot be fixed. They don't carry with them the market prices. Because they don't carry with them the market prices, the problem is that people tend to overuse these. And in economics, again, in the field of economics, this is broadly known as the tragedy of the commons. Commons is common property resources. They are referred to as commons. And the tragedy is that because people are using them collectively, they do not carry with them an appropriate market price. So people are not actually paying the price for them, and hence they tend to overuse. What does this lead to? This leads to tragedy. The tragedy is we are exploiting these resources, we are degrading them, we are depleting them. So that's the problem. So the problem is of incentives. The problem, as put in this slide, is of government regulation, private property rights. So it doesn't carry all this with this. What works best for the common property resources is what has emerged as a solution by itself, which is a community-based management system. So the communities, or the people, those who use, are the ones who run them. Now, what I have tried, I'm unable to go in details in the presentation in such a short span of time. But if I'm going ahead with the research paper, then all these points will be discussed in the research paper. Primarily, the use of CPRs, that's the common property resources, governance, and basically the evolution of the role of women in the use of CPRs. So governance is what I have already talked about. So the communities govern them. The uses are, again, the people, the communities who are using. Now, the problem is that, as I said, based in rural areas, now because of urbanization, since my topic talks about urbanization, because of urbanization, these resources which are traditionally in the rural sector are depleting. So grazing lands, farms, forests, these are all depleting. And the problem is that this is making certain sections of people vulnerable. Who all would be vulnerable? The landless, the small and medium farmers, and within this we bring in the category of women, the most vulnerable sections of people in the rural areas who are traditionally users of these common property resources. So there are three things. One is a gender perspective on the use of common property resources, which is where gender is a socially constructed set of identities, the roles, the responsibilities the men and the women take, and the relationships between them. So suppose I'm talking about common property resources only here. So traditionally, women have been doing certain tasks using certain common property resources, be it fetching water from common village ponds or river bodies, or maybe collecting fuel wood from the forests, or fodder collection. All these are women-oriented tasks. Then we also have a men domain. So suppose we're talking about grazing of livestock, that has been a men domain. So majorly wherever women have been participating in the use of common property resources, over time what is happening is, because of depletion of these resources, again because of urbanization, women as users of common property resources are amongst the set of sufferers, major sufferers. Now, this is also because of the societal dynamics that prevail in the rural sector. So I have not been able to touch much upon that in the presentation, but I'm just highlighting quickly a few constraints. I'll put them up in my research paper in detail. Constraints. So women basically lack access to land, productive assets, legal titles to land. These are their constraints. Another constraint is that women do not have representation in the local decision-making bodies. So there is a lack of poor rural organization, which can basically empower them through training. Then the constraint is credit and extension services, which are again male-oriented, lack of women, awareness of their own legal rights. So these are the set of constraints which will be discussed in detail in the research paper. To conclude, we need to look at, only for this presentation purpose, I have to be quick. So the way forward, I have discussed the way forward in three broad contexts. One, what I would call as a peri-urban context. The peri-urban context is basically a consequential result of a rural-urban interaction. It's an interface between the rural-urban activities, institutions, social, economic, environmental systems that are coming up, because there is an agrarian system, there is an urban system, and there is a natural resource system. So what is the interface with urbanization? How does this take us forward? That means how do the various responsible authorities, institutions come in place and discuss the issue of declining common property resources, the role of women in this context, in the peri-urban context. Another way forward is specifically the role of government or the state. So they know that the resources are depleting. So what exactly can the government do? Government can take steps. For example, forests are depleting. Women have been working in collecting fuel wood from the forest. So if forests are depleting, what exactly can the government do? Government can undertake social forestry programs, extension forestry programs, afforestation in public places, rehabilitation of degraded forests, etc. So the role of government is the way forward. And then the role of NGOs and international organizations, as well as government. So government can also come in creating self-sustaining organizations particularly for rural poor women, which not only empowers them, but also gives them access to participation in the management of CPRs. So this is the way forward that I thought I would discuss, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pooja ji. That was a really interesting and comprehensive presentation. I would just like to talk about the serial order that we are going with. So first of all, it was Pooja Saxena ji. This will be followed by Rishika Patel ji, then Suniti ji, then Shwetamma ji, then Pallavi ji, then Jesti and Varsha ji, then Riya ji, then Rashmi ji, which will be followed by Dr. Meghna Kumari ji, and lastly Aditi Chaudhary ji. I will also be putting this in the chat box for reference. So Rishika Patel ji, you can go ahead with your presentation now.
Only one suggestion to Pooja Saxena ji, how the smart city mission going to impact the common resources that you can take up in your final, when you finalize your paper.
Yes, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Yes. So my topic is access to urban spaces, something similar. I've chosen to do a poetic documentary of sorts to for my creative project. I'll just present that. Give me a second. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear it?
We can, yes.
चाय की तकलीफ है चाय बहुत मिले अच्छा जब मैंने कहा तो आदित्य सोचने मुझे होती है रस्ते करने की सोच तो ऐसे साले अपनी रस्ते पे आती है कि कोई देख रही है चाय की तकलीफ छोड़ छोड़ चाय की सकता है अरे भैया सब मैं डायरेक्ट टू टेस्ट सेंटर नहीं क्या माँ बाप ने सिखाया नहीं घर आने का रेस्ट की लंबाई ऐसे ऐसे घूमने की जगह बस इनको नेट सेट करा नहीं थी इसको कैसे ऐसे घूमने से नहीं मैं शहर के वो कोने में जहाँ बंद की रोशनी नहीं पहुंच पाई और रात में तो ये सर्जरी तो माँ बाप का नाम और उसके लिए गाल से देखती तो घूमने चलने की बंदी है बस टाइम से घर आना है जाना और पसंद का दिल्ली में खाना बस फिर क्या था सबको खबर नहीं है और शहर के कोने को ज्ञान मिलने में कहाँ लग रहा था अभी तो कुछ नहीं रहा खबर करने वाला है ना खबर वाले भी नेता है तो सभी खुद तुम्हारे जाने के लिए तुम्हारे और रख नहीं तुम्हारे मिशन एजेंडा बनाएगा अरे भैया इलेक्शन वाला साल है from a podium about what the telling us. delicate marriage. That was it from my side. I wanted to talk about access to urban spaces because ever since industrialization, urban areas have become the sources of employment and education for us. But when we say my access to a certain institution is um, imperished because I am not able to travel as easily, or I am not able to accommodate my routine into it because I have to take a different route because there is male gaze, there is sexual harassment on the streets. These are the issues that come in a way to access to such opportunities. To cater to those, we could look at technological advancements, we could look at community-based interventions and structural changes in how we construct our public spaces altogether. I've talked about this in detail in my research essay, but for the creative project, I wanted to do the video. That's from my side. Thank you.
Rishika ji, the last frame in which you have given the quotation, you should put it for nearly 5 to 7 seconds. We could hardly read. We could not read for more than two words. No, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, Sunidhi ji, you can go ahead.
Sure. Let me just present my screen. Is it visible?
Yes.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sunidhi Sampaye. I'm currently a second-year student of an undergraduate program, and I'm from Bangalore. The topic that I have chosen for my research essay is about the popular show Gilmore Girls. My topic is navigating gender equality and empowerment in the world of Gilmore Girls. The reason I've chosen this topic is because the importance of pop culture in our lives is more important now than ever. We see that this early 2000s show has such a wide range of female characters that has not been seen ever before. We see that most of the important characters are women, and they each contribute a different aspect to the town which they live in, which is a fictional town called Stars Hollow. Speaking about the first character, this is the main character of the show. Her name is Lorelai Gilmore. In a time where teenage pregnancy and single motherhood, especially like in the early 2000s, it was condemned. This was one of the shows that portrayed the main character as a single mother who raised her child without help from a husband or anyone else for that matter. She worked at an inn by herself and raised her daughter similarly. We see that since she is a teenage mother, she goes through a host of changes herself as well as her daughter. This is actually a photo essay which includes stills from the show to portray each character's depth, and the analysis will be told by me. We see all these stills. We see the first one is her daughter talking about her during her graduation. There is another scene where she is sympathetic towards her daughter's situation, even though she doesn't know what the reason for it is. The next main character is Rory Gilmore, whose name is also Lorelai Gilmore. Her mother has named after herself. There is a joke that Rory says that, my mother named me after herself. She is really a feminist icon, isn't she? We see Rory as an ambitious girl who, rather than faltering for romantic relationships in her teenage years, is extremely driven and charged to become a journalist that was in the early 2000s, specifically male-dominated occupation. We see that she's extremely driven for her academic insights, and she sets her sights on first going to Harvard, which is one of the most prestigious universities, and ends up getting into almost 3 Ivy League colleges, but then ends up going to Yale. As you can see, this is one of the most famous dialogues from this series, which says, "Who cares if I'm pretty, if I fail my finals?" So we see how she is extremely driven and she's extremely ambitious in what she wants to do in her life. And it is extremely refreshing to see a female lead and a teenager who is like this. Moving on, we see Paris Geller. Now, Paris Geller is Rory Gilmore's classmate. We see her as a typically masculine type of woman who has masculine attributes. She is what we would call a bully, but we would also see how she changes over the years with Rory. And we see how, though she is extremely ambitious and rash and driven to the point where she could even put others down, which are technically traits that are attributed to men. But we see that a woman character in her teenage years is also like this. She says, "I want to win, and I'm going to win." That shows her competitive spirit, and this is just for a school project, if I may add. The second scene that I pulled up is we're girls, so we could only be arguing about a boy, right? And the ironic part is they were, ironically. We also see how she says, "Give me more homework, it'll keep me off my mind." Other quotes include, "I have a life after I graduate from Harvard." So we see how she's extremely driven and she is competitive. She takes part in debates and she has crushing arguments, even to put down the men in front of her. Finally, this is one of the main things that I wish to address in my research paper, which is the intersectional feminism that is present in Gilmore Girls. We see this through the Kim family, which who are an Asian American Korean family who live in Stars Hollow. We see that the rest of the show is typically white, upper class women who have a say in society, regardless. But these are Korean women, they are immigrants, and they have her mother has strict rules for her in her house. Despite these strict rules, we see how Lane Kim, the daughter, makes an image for herself. She becomes the bass player and a drums player in a band, even without her mother's permission. We see one of the scenes where she colors her hair, despite being from an extremely Orthodox Christian family, and 2 minutes later, she dyes her hair back to black. So we see that she embodies a kind of quiet empowerment because she rebels against her mother's strict rules and she defies the strict traditions that Christianity has put forward on her. She pursues rock music, as I said before, by becoming a lead drum player in a band. And she finds her voice despite being a secondary character. She is only Rory's best friend in the show. But we see how she has a voice of her own at the end and she grows to be an imposing young woman. This is one of my favorite scenes from the series, and this is what I would like to conclude on. One of the girls asks Lorelai, "So girls go on adventures too?" And Lorelai replies, "And they go in heaps." All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Suniti ji. That was a very unique presentation, and I'm sure you've convinced all of us here to watch Gilmore Girls. So thank you so much. Vibhuti Patel, ma'am, if you have anything to add, any suggestions?
In their life worlds, what has been the position or status of men and boys? In the life worlds of these women, what has been the position or space for men?
Sure, ma'am. Ma'am, we see that most of the male characters are secondary characters in the show. That has been done intentionally. We see that the man who is Rory's father is completely absent from her life most of the time. But there is an important male figure in their town called Luke Dames, who helps Rory throughout her lives and acts as a fatherly figure to her. So he's one of the main male dominant male figures in the series. As well as we have a lot of men in the town who help both of them grow as people. One could be the town head. His name is Taylor. There is also a man called Michelle who works in the inn that Lorelai is a part of. And we see that this person, Michelle, does not conform to the traditional male standards. We could say he is also does not cater to the heteronormative standards. Even though he is a straight man, we see that he has a good sense of style. He has a Parisian accent. He loves dressing himself up, as well as eating extremely good and eating extremely good food and extremely healthy traits that we would typically associate with women. So these are the important male characters as well.
Are there gender minorities in the film?
As I said before, it is typically catered to a higher upper middle class background, because these are women. At the end of the day, Lorelai does come from a rich family, and she gets a lot of money from her family, even though she is technically raising her child alone. But we see the presence of many minorities, such as Egyptians, as well as African Americans as well, and Asian Americans, like I mentioned, Koreans. So, despite there being less number of minorities, we see that they play an important role in the in the series, both as supporting characters, but also as whole characters on their own. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Sunidhi ji. Now, Shweta Maharaji, you can go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Hi, good evening. So my topic is women harassment at workplace. I have selected a very, I can say cliche, or all the norms and the rules that are already existing at place. So I have chosen this topic only because of my real life experiences, not just with me, but with my colleagues and with my friends around, be it college, be it school, or be it my own workplace, and multiple workplaces, not just one workplace or one institution as such. So I have basically dealt with like what is sexual harassment at workplace, the existing laws in place, and mostly I have focused on findings of current scenario, whereabout I have conducted okay, I'll like explain as it comes. So the first slide I have basically described about what is sexual harassment, or what are the things which could be counted in as sexual harassment as well as non-sexual harassment, and the various definitions, the various clauses which could be counted in, that could be the physical contact, or even for a demand or request for sexual favors, and the making sexual remarks, or any kind of unwelcome physical, verbal, or non-verbal conduct of a sexual nature. Thereafter, I have dealt with the already existing laws at place, which I think most of us here at this forum at least are aware of. That is the sexual harassment of women at workplace. Then the Vishakha guidelines provided by the Honorable Supreme Court, and then the She Box and the various initiatives by Ministry of Women and Child Development in particular, and also the constitutional framework, which are basically dealt in our fundamental rights through Article 15 and 19. Then I have mostly tried to focus on the current scenario despite the existing laws, that though there are laws in place, but still, according to various data by NCRB or by the survey conducted by Indian Bar Association, there are alarming number of cases which show that though there are laws in place, but still we need to I mean, on the ground, on the plate, it is people are still suffering and people are still not aware of a lot of things. So mostly my research or my analysis would be around this. That is a verbal anecdotes which I've conducted via a survey, where I've used verbal anecdotes to the people who cannot like fill the Google form or kind of like fill any kind of give any kind of written data to me through a survey or anything like that. So I so far for this PPT I talked to 4 people. One was my household maid, second one was Anganwadi nurse, and third a primary school teacher, and one was an IT corporate professional. So the research paper in which I'll be presenting, I mean after few days, so there I will be talking in detail about how and what were my method of collection of data, how did I arrive at the conclusion. And also I use various tools like I use pie graphs, pie charts, graphs, and data simulation models, where I dealt about how this is still a big loophole in our society, that this thing still exists despite various laws in place. So my verbal questions to them, especially the household worker and the Anganwadi worker, was this: like, what is sexual harassment, and have they ever come across this situation? If they have, then are they aware of this term that this is known as sexual harassment, and how do they report this, and are they aware of this existing laws, and has anybody ever helped with them via this or not? So I'll be discussing more about this on my the paper which I'll be presenting, the research analysis which I'll be doing, and also the abstract a few weeks back which I've shared. So I've got valuable feedbacks from Vibhuti ma'am, that these things are already in existing. So what I would be actually researching and analyzing over it. So ma'am, in due through 2-3 weeks of time, I was busy conducting whatever time I used to get apart from my work and study. I was busy conducting these things. So far verbally, so I'm like, I've got answers that it's a no. It's like many people even don't know, and these people, these household, these sweeper, these nurses, I mean, for them too, it's a big challenge. Even if we talk personally about me, okay, I know about the rules and the laws and the rules, but if you still ask me like ASAP who I have to report, even I would still take a minute or so, something to think upon, that which on Google I will type how to report, or which Google number to find. Like for ambulance we dial, for police we dial 100, for ambulance we dial some number, for fire stations we dial some number, but for these things we don't we are not aware which number to dial exactly and how to report about these things. So basically I'll be doing more work on this rather than what has been done. It's done. Like obviously it's the laws in place. I mean, our seniors have worked hard to put the laws in place, but we as a common person, how do we implement it and how do we learn to implement it? That awareness I want to spread from my end at least.
So I think when it comes to metadata, you can use pie chart and diagrams and bar chart. But
Yes.
this your main strength is the in-depth case studies of these 4 women whom you have interviewed, and also your personal. You can anonymize the interview. You need not give reveal their identity. And also, what motivated you and to dwell on this topic. So that would be your narrative, qualitative analysis is your strength of your paper. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your inputs.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Now, Pallavi ji, please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Reet. I am not able to see the share screen option. Can you
Please
just-
join as panelist, Pallavi.
How do I do that? Should I
No. Did you get notification?
join as panelist? Okay, yes. Yes. So share screen option. Is it visible now?
Yes.
It is in working mode. You can make it slideshow.
Right, ma'am. I'll just... Yeah. So it's in the slideshow now.
Yeah.
So this is I'm Pallavi, and I am presently working as the area chair for Department of Political Science at GV Goenka University. And prior to this, I have completed my PhD from Law and Governance, JNU, and where I was looking into the question of institutional forms of violence against women. And in that, I had picked up the case study of women in protective homes, shelter homes. There I realized that the women victims of violence were obviously housed, and obviously this came very late with the when CETA was Suppression of Immoral Trafficking Prevention Act was amended, and in 1986 when these shelter homes were there, and they started seeing women as victims and not as perpetrators of certain offenses. But sadly, what I realized was that these women who have been victims of direct forms of violence were actually facing newer forms of oppressive mechanisms within these institutions, which were not so much visible in their nature. And instead of challenging or instead of empowering women, they were rather preserving those patriarchal practices, whether it was rehabilitation through reunions, family settlements, uh, restricting women's movement, teaching them, the normative values, the social norms. So these were the experiences that women were undergoing in those closed boundaries, so hidden away from the common eye of the people. And there I realized that there is a need to revisit violence. In my PhD, I was interrogating the idea of protection. With that, I moved on to investigate violence as a concept. Somehow the idea of violence got sidelined and just got busy with other professional familial engagements. And thank you so much, IMPRI, for giving me this opportunity for revisiting my long lost, incomplete pending project, where I really wanted to investigate violence. And with all these presentations that we had before, all the engagements that IMPRI provided us with, they did give a lot of food for thought to understand violence as beyond how it has been defined all this while in the policy domain. So I am working on, this is still an unfinished project, and this is just a proposal, and your inputs will be really valuable to me, for me to shape the project and get into the field with a nuanced understanding on violence. So I'm trying to revisit and rethink the idea of violence against women. And the focus area here I'm picking up is domestic spaces. Here I'm trying to understand, how there are these forms of violence that exist, conceptualizing violence as within its twin category. One, which is invisible oppressive mechanism that operates within patriarchal domains, where there are certain norms that women are supposed to follow, and certain cultural pressures that they experience, also due to other factors of poverty, deprivations that exist. So these are the invisible oppressive mechanisms. As against that, there are visible criminal acts against women that women experience as violence, in the form of rape, trafficking, and so on and so forth. So what I'm trying to argue out in my paper is that it is these invisible oppressive mechanisms, the biases, the prejudices, the discriminations against women, which are categorized within the larger domain of structural violence, and they lead to what we call direct violence, which involves wife beating, trafficking, and so on. And this direct violence hence results in endemic marginalization of women. So this is the framework where I'm trying to build my work or the paper on. So here, to begin with, I am highlighting the various direct forms of violence which are visible and invite criminal proceedings. Now, these have legal recognition in terms of physical injury, wife beating, sexual exploitation, rape, dowry deaths, forced marriages, child marriages, and so on. We have various committees that have worked on defining violence, where a J.S. Verma committee defined violence as, deprivation of the fundamental right to live with dignity, where United Nations, as late as 1993, recognized violence in terms of physical, sexual, and mental harm or suffering to women, which includes threats, acts of coercion, arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether occurring in public or private life. Now, amidst all these wider definitions of violence, what falls short is that violence against women starts even before their birth in the form of sex selections and feticide. So, to understand this entire life cycle of violence against women, I went back to Zimmerman and Ellsberg and realized that they had classified various stages of violence, how it permeates to the next stage, and which starts with the pre-birth stage, where there is sex selection and there's abortion, sex-selective abortions are there. Then we have at the stage of infancy, we have infanticide, malnutrition, child abuse. Then at the stage of childhood, we have abuses like trafficking, child labor, child marriage, rapes. At the stage of adolescence, there is exploitation, there is trafficking, there is forced marriage, there is rape, there are acid attacks. And at the stage of adulthood comes in crimes such as domestic abuse, intimate partner violence, sexual harassment at workplace, dowry deaths, honor killings, forced conceptions and forced abortions, and so on. So while these are those visible forms of violence that are that reflect in the entire life cycle of women, there are certain situation-based violence also that exist. Here, women are treated as objects of oppression, regulation, and vengeance, particularly in areas of conflict and war, whether voluntary or forced migration, due to certain climatic and natural disasters. Then there is this custodial crimes that exist, and then there are domestic crimes. The vulnerability of women is not limited to these direct forms of violence. What I am trying to argue is the persistent presence of indirect forms of violence, which are invisible in nature and lack policy definition. These forms of violence, basically, they emerge out of inherent structural inequalities as a consequence of poverty, racial and ethnic discrimination, certain economic inequalities, and so on, and are reflected in public and private life in terms of limited access to employment opportunities, such as there are wage differentials, problems of leave benefits, sexual harassment at workplace. Then also in terms of services, where women have limited financial literacy and are unable to access banking services. In terms of amenities, we have had extensive discussions on how women have to fetch water and how these serve as disadvantages and varied levels of disadvantages how women experience due to lack of access to basic amenities. Then there is healthcare facilities. There are these issues around institutional deliveries and health and the entire wash that is working towards it. Then there are certain deprivations and indirect forms of violence when it comes to lack of access to education, whether it is due to reasons of infrastructure or reasons of poverty. So with all this, what we understand is that women are adversely impacted and hence experience violence in its indirect form, and how these forms of violence, they percolate or penetrate into domestic spaces. Coming to now, these indirect forms of violence have been summarized within the larger category of structural violence. And John Galton first took up in his seminal work on peace research, and where he talked about structural violence as impairment of fundamental needs. By fundamental needs, he implied four. One is survival, and a negation of this survival implied death or mortality. Another fundamental need was classified as well-being, and a negation of well-being implied poverty, illness, and misery. Third was identity, and a negation of this implied alienation. And lastly, he explained was the freedom, and a negation of that implied oppression and repression. Now, when we move on, when we try to fit in women into this frame of structural violence, we move into what I discussed earlier as, women's limited access to healthcare, education, labor rights, and so on. Now, the wider studies on violence have largely focused on direct forms of violence. They have ignored these structural aspects, which is, especially within the private spaces, which is where the policy fails to address the problem of domestic violence. Domestic violence has too many connotations attached to it, where it is about where it is not just about wife beating, it is not just about dowry murders, it is not just about honor killings. It is also about the experiences that women undergo in the presence of the perpetrator and in the absence of the perpetrator, and how those experiences are realized. They come into reality due to these structural inequalities that exist even before in their life. So here I am trying to explain the mechanisms of structural violence. That is one, these were also outlined by Gautam and explained how exploitation emerged as unjust socio-economic relations. These are the various factors that highlight the presence of structural violence in domestic spaces. So in the form of exploitation, where there are unjust socio-economic relations, in terms of division of labor and unequal share in resources leading to impoverishment. Then there is penetration, which implies the ideological implantation within the collective, where the women are made to believe that yes, they are they are in need of protection, and there's this false consciousness that makes them believe that this protection is for their benefit. And in the name of this protection, what they do is internalize various forms of violence. Then the next mechanism through which structural violence operates in domestic spaces is segmentation, where these power relations that are operating are obscured. They are treated as lesser beings, and they are made to believe that they are ones. Also, another phenomenon is marginalization, where they are excluded from the public domain and employment opportunities. And this certainly impacts their presence in the private spaces, their authority to take decisions, their choices, everything gets impacted with this entire marginalization or exclusion. Lastly, I also move on to explaining deprivation, which implies deprivation in terms of freedom and nutrition, dignity, and rights over their bodies in terms of reproductive rights and etc. So in a nutshell, my work has moved on to a stage where I have been able to get some inputs to understand. The biggest challenge that I'm facing is how to measure these structural forms of violence. But if I look into the narratives that that were cited, and for the lack of time, it is not possible for me to cite the narratives here. But yes, just picking up those small points from there, and where women responded, stating and explaining that how they have internalized these structural violence and they are not even aware that this exists, is that I just stay at home and do the daily routine, nothing special. Yes, I do fasting and follow rituals on special occasions, such as Karwa Chauth, for the well-being of my husband. His health and long life is important for me and my children. My in-laws don't like wearing Western wear. I wear saris now. My daughter wears suits only, and of subtle restrictions, how they get intensified gradually is coming up in the next stage of their expressions. My family loves me. Sometimes they do shout and scold me, but when I don't work properly or break something, but that's okay. Nobody treats me with love. They do humiliate me and they call me names. I cannot eat when I want. My hands shiver because of hunger. I cannot move freely beyond this boundary. They say I need to be protected. I want to work and earn for myself. They don't allow me. They neither help me. So this is the next level of intensification of violence against women that they experience. And from here starts the direct modes of violence. So what I am wanting to conclude here is that behind every act of direct violence, there is a form of structural violence that operates indirectly on women, which to this date lacks definition in laws and policies on violence. So here I'm going to look into these various aspects, and this is the future scope of my study, where indirect violence, I have to see it as violence as protective surveillance, violence as moral surveillance, violence as behavioral regulation, violence as normative discipline, violence as material deprivation, and violence as ambient fear, where even if the perpetrator is not present, but the fear or the experience of violence keeps haunting the victim. And this is how the study is expected to proceed in future. And here is a small video which I would like to, it's just a 5 seconds, 10 seconds clip. And this is a way of summarizing. This was prepared by one of my students, and to explain how violence very subtly operates and how it leaves impressions and marks on the lives of women, and which is not recognized in the policy framework. I'm just playing it. Please let me know. So thank you so much. That's what I believe in. Change is not easy, but the struggle must go on. And with this, I'd like to conclude. Thank you so much.
Are you going to include the issue of mental well-being?
Yes, ma'am. Certainly, when it comes to, I mean, that is a domain beyond my understanding, and I had to really get into some works maybe on the psychological aspects. I will definitely look into aspects of mental well-being, because when the moment I talk about ambient fear, the issue of mental well-being comes into picture. So certainly that is one aspect. I was a little scared of picking that up. I know it opens a lot in terms, but now that you've said, so I will take this up, and I will definitely try to work on that also.
Thank you so much, Pallavi-ji, for such
Lot
a
of work, lot of labor has gone into.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. So this is all Professor Neerja Gopal is my supervisor, and she has been guiding me all this while on, to look into the various nuances where you cannot ignore one aspect and think of arriving at a conclusion. So, and certainly this entire workshop has been really unique and motivating. It has been really pushing us to stretch beyond our comfort zones and look into challenging aspects of various forms of violence against women. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, Jesti-ji and Vasha-ji, you can go ahead with your presentation. So you've shared the video with us. For that, Priyanka-ji, if you could please present the video.
Sure. If they would like to present from their system, that is also fine.
Yeah,
Would
we
you
can
like
do
to?
that. Yeah.
Okay, okay, sure.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So it's been a great pleasure to join these sections, and especially to Pallaviji for especially broadening on that topic. With that, I'll start with our topic today. I, Justice Karia, along with Varsha Jose, is going to present as a group on the topic of sexual and reproductive health in Rohingya refugee people. So the theme that we have, the title that we have given to this theme is that Unheard Crisis, the Sexual Reproductive Health Crisis in Rohingya Refugee Camps. So it is said that Rohingyans are a minority community which are considered as the most persecuted in the world. And among them, 50% of the refugees are women. And we know that in a situation where there is war and in any crisis situation, women and girls are the most affected one. So, and most of the time, sexual and reproductive issues and health issues are often neglected. So we would like to to touch that topic, and we'd like to expand on that topic. And also we have tried to suggest some policy solution regarding that. So, and the medium that we have chosen is a video essay. So I would like Varsha to present that. Varsha, we can't hear the voice, audio.
Varsha, please also unmute yourself.
Okay, yeah. The Rohingya people, a Muslim minority, have faced decades of persecution in Myanmar. Since 2017, violent attacks against the Rohingya triggered a mass exodus. Now, hundreds of thousands of Rohingya refugees live in overcrowded camps in Bangladesh and elsewhere in South Asia. Women and girls bear a disproportionate burden of this crisis. Today, we examine the dire state of sexual and reproductive health among Rohingya women, the challenges they face, and what must be done. Rohingya women in refugee camps face overcrowded and unsanitary conditions, limited access to necessities, and neglect of sexual and reproductive health needs due to focus on survival. Many have experienced trauma, compounding the impact on their physical and mental health. Within camps, Rohingya women encounter severe shortages in sexual and reproductive health services. Challenges include lack of contraception access, unsafe births, heightened risk of gender based violence, and early marriage, placing significant strain on women and families. The sexual and reproductive health crisis intersects with cultural barriers, limited female healthcare providers, and low education and awareness. Traditional norms, discomfort with male providers, and lack of information perpetuate harmful practices, making it difficult for women to seek essential healthcare. Some policy solutions. Ensuring sexual and reproductive health services for Rohingya women in crisis requires a multi-pronged approach. Firstly, implementing the Minimum Initial Service Package (MISP) is crucial. This internationally recognized standard outlines essential SRH interventions during conflict and displacement situations. Studying successful MISP implementation cases can provide valuable insights. Secondly, a gender sensitive approach is vital. This involves prioritizing female healthcare workers, providing confidential and culturally appropriate spaces, and training healthcare professionals to build trust with this vulnerable population. Thirdly, integrating with the host country's healthcare system is essential. Successful examples include training local medical staff on refugee specific needs and expanding service access. Finally, addressing the trauma and gender based violence faced by Rohingya women is critical. This can involve establishing safe houses, providing legal aid, and implementing community based programs. By implementing these comprehensive strategies, we can strive to ensure essential SRH services for Rohingya women navigating complex crisis situations. In the midst of adversity, the principle of sexual and reproductive health persists as fundamental human right. It is crucial to prioritize the comprehensive overhaul of policies, allocate significant investment into essential services, and systematically dismantle societal barriers to ensure the advancement of Rohingya girls and women.
Thank you so much, Justine, for your presentation. Vibhuti ma'am, if you have any suggestions.
In your policy solution, you need to talk about gender responsive budgeting to address the reproductive and health needs, both at a subnational level, national level, and even the global community and the UN women, their responsibility for this target allocation of funds, functionaries through the budgetary allocation. So gender commitments get translated into budgetary commitments and financial commitments. That should be a very important thing, because the scarcity of fund doesn't allow the good quality services as well as even the habitat in which they live, no? Which are also responsible for reproductive health crisis. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We will definitely look into that. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, Riya Pandeyji, you can go ahead with your presentation.
Yeah, sure. Just a second.
Yeah.
Just let me know if the audio is being heard.
No, there's no audio right now.
It's not?
No.
Then how do I just share or maybe you guys can share it because I mailed this video.
Try going full screen again, Riya.
Yeah, sure. Is it audible?
Go on the next cursor.
This slide control.
Yeah, slide control, bottom left. Bottom left. Go to bottom left.
Okay.
With your cursor, yeah.
Sorry, just I think there's something like I'm not able to understand. Just give me a sec.
In the screen, go to bottom left.
Yeah, so where do I get the option of sharing the audio?
No, you can go to bottom left in the screen, come to bottom, take your cursor below. Just move your cursor a bit.
Or maybe I can present it at the end. Anything would work.
Okay. Okay. Preet, we can go to next.
Yes, sir. Rashmi ji, you can go ahead with your presentation.
Yeah, sure. Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the topic which I have taken is impact study on early childhood education policies in India. So early childhood education is very important in today's generation, as we focus on saying today's learners are tomorrow's leaders. So we are focusing here on the policies which are made for these children, and along with these children also the women involved in the betterment of providing services to these children from the age group of 3 to 8 years old. So this study basically covers all the challenges, the policies which are incorporated, and what are the impact from these policies which have been implemented. So moving on, talking about the background of early childhood education policies in India, the first pre-primary education was the National Policy on Education, which was its inception was in 1986, and it purely was on the early learning of these children. So this was the first policy which was incorporated, and later on moving further further policies were also implemented, like something like ICDS, that is Integrated Child Development Services, which was in 1975, and followed by the NCRT frameworks and the NEP policy. Here the government has also given a broader framework on the Nipun Bharat policy, which states that all the children by grade 3, they have to be very uh, good in literacy and numeracy skills by end of grade 3. So here the foundation levels have been focused, and the foundational literacy and numeracy in the age of 0 to 8 has been a focus. And coming to the recent updates, we also have the National Education Policy, which was incorporated in 2020. Along with these policies, we also have other policies like Samagra Shiksha policy, which is completely focusing on quality education to improve the learning outcomes of the early years. So, going to this impact study, so I have got an opportunity to visit a few sites, which are the preschools in semi-urban areas and anganwadis in rural areas. And here I got to conduct a few observational studies and interviews of the Anganwadi workers, helpers, and the CDPOs. And here we also like tested a few children on their holistic development, especially on the literacy and cognitive levels. So a lot of activities were conducted with the children to understand their skills as per their age group. So these are some snippets of the visit. So the findings of this impact study was, after the policies have been incorporated, the enrollment rates have been increased. So earlier there were children, the parents used to take them along with them while they go to work, uh, basically the daily wages workers. So after these anganwadis and balwadis have come into existence, these children now go to anganwadis and balwadis, where the focus is on their nutrition as well as the educational aspects. There are other facilities also provided for these children, like immunization and the healthcare facilities as well. Due to which the enrollments have been increased, and now the parents are willing their child to go to these anganwadi centers because they are taken care of very well. And also the cognitive gains of the children have increased, especially in language and mathematical skills, as the focus is not only on the nutrition, the focus is as well as on the education part of the children, and lot of hands-on activities have been conducted with these children in anganwadis. And as the group activities also have been conducted in the anganwadis, there is a lot of increase in the social aspect as well. Now children are able to mingle with each other, have social interaction, the emotions level have been increased. So these are some of the developments. And now after these anganwadi workers have been promoting the policies, and have been addressing the communities, and encouraging them to send their children to anganwadis, the parental involvement has also been increased. The parents have now started supporting their children, asking them what did they learn in anganwadis, and what did they do with their friends today. So there are a lot of parents also conduct a few activities hands on at home as well, with the use of fruits and vegetables, or the items they have at home, with related to language and numeracy. So there is a lot of and hand in hand support from parent as well. So the positive effects of early childhood education policies have been like, there is academic readiness now. Now the children, where they say that children should attend grade 1 at the age group of 6. So these anganwadis and preschools now focus on 3 to 6 years old, where they make the children school ready, and whatever basic concepts the children should learn in this age group, they have complete focus on that. And the nutrition levels have also been increased, as the policies on nutrition as also have been implemented. And coming to anganwadis, there is a particular month, that is the September, where this Poshan Abhiyan is focused on, and the anganwadi workers along with the community, they celebrate this month, and they also educate people on the nutritional values. And coming to the community engagement as well, due to early childhood education, the government has released so many documents and so many policies related to home learning, coming to after school support, etc., where the community, and also these community days also have been into process. So there is engagement as well from the community. And coming to the gender parity here, the education system is such that now the girl child, earlier what used to happen is the elder one used to stay at home, taking care of the younger ones, the sisters and brothers at home, and the parents used to go to work. So now that the parents are also educated to send their children, so this compulsory education, and nowadays the girl child ratio also has been increased. So along with the boys, now parents are very keen on getting their girls also educated. The challenges what we find in implementing these policies are like the resource allocation. So there is very limited resources from government's end, where which hinders this process of policy implementation. And the quality of education maintained, especially in some of the balwadis and anganwadis, also remain a little untouched, because a lot of anganwadi workers or the teachers or the caregivers are not trained on how to take care of the children, how to educate them. So a lot of education aspect they do not focus on. So there is a little quality issue in terms of education. And as I said, the teacher training part, so most of the teachers, they would have got the training while they were recruited maybe 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and after that there is no training happened to a few where they get adapted to new technology or new trends which are going on. And coming to the monitoring and assessment bit, a preschool system might focus on the holistic approach, and they would monitor the children, the learning outcomes of the children. But coming to Anganwadis, due to their registers and register maintenance and the other day-to-day work, they are not able to focus on the assessments of the children or monitoring the learning outcomes of the children, how the children are progressing. So these are some of the challenges which we could see broadly. And coming to the recommendations for improving these implementation of the policies are for the government and policy makers. So the investment should increase on the infrastructure and resources of Anganwadis. Now that there is this Bala model which has been incorporated in Anganwadis and rural preschools, where they use this building as a learning tool, and a lot of painting is happening on the building as well, and they're providing chairs and tables to the children, etc. But it is not happening at a scale, it is happening at a very few places, and there is a need to increase the investment on the infrastructure so that children get better benefits, and the ones who are undeserved in the undeserved area get more focus on. So also on the monitoring and supervision mechanism, due to their other apart from the academics, they also have this administrative work, and due to which even there is too much burden on the Anganwadi workers and CDPOs, etc. So there need to be a monitoring system, so such that every aspect of their work is being supervisioned, and a better quality is to be delivered. And there is this integrated Anganwadi programs which is based on health and nutrition, etc. A few programs are still not uh, into reach, or a few community members or the parents are still not aware of that, so they need to yet educate the public. And coming to the Anganwadi workers, they need to attend the trainings regularly, and focus on their capacity building, and improve their skills, and also reach out to the community and parents for better engagement, so that they also can help the children in learning. And coming to parents and community members, a lot more programs to be incorporated at a community level, so that they are also aware of the next steps to be taken on. So nowadays, though, as per the trends are going on, most of the people are well aware about the education part as well, and there is increased in enrollment, academic readiness, nutrition levels, and etc. But if government also takes care of a little more focus on providing better benefits, so it might reach more people. So I would like to conclude with this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rashmi, for a great presentation. Professor Vibhuti Patel, ma'am, if you have any suggestions.
I think two suggestions. Your work is very good, but Forum for Crashes and Childcare Services has demanded that Anganwadis should be providing full day services, because these 3 hours of children being there is not helping in terms of increasing work participation of women, number one. Number two, Anganwadi should not be given honorarium or treated as a voluntary worker. The state is the employer, so they should be given the adequate wages, the whatever is the minimum wages of the state, and they should be treated as employees. So what are your views on these two recommendations? Yeah.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rashmi ji. Dr. Megha, you can go ahead with your presentation.
We can move to next read.
Yes, so Aditi Chaudhary ji, you can go ahead.
I shall be starting right away. So, is it visible?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Yeah, so good evening, everyone. So this is my topic, engendering urban spaces for achieving sustainable development goals. So this is a bit about me. So I'd be summarizing the research, the research part, and I'll be focusing more on the creative aspect. So this is something that I'm working on, that lack of sustainable and planned urban development has many impacts on different genders. So there's this anecdotes that I have from college life wherein we used to stay in PGs, and there was this restaurant facing the main road, and towards the back side, all the males used to gather and they used to keep staring throughout the day. And I mean, there would be at least 4 or 5 of them always standing there, and so it was so hard to even go to our balconies. So it's more of that. And furthermore, this migrants is an issue that I've observed around me here in my hometown. Currently, I'm residing in Jammu. So they provide cheap labor, but they are kind of living in makeshift shelters, and women are the worst sufferers. So this is a bit about the a bit background about the poor accessibility and the all the issues that are governing. Sorry, the issues that are circling around this unplanned development. So this is also a brief overview. This is more solution oriented, and the major agencies that have talked about this issue. So this is all for your kind cruiser, and now I'll be focusing on the creative aspect. So this is something about once we were having a house renovated. So there was a laborer, one of the laborers who came, and he was quite young. So newly married. So on the last day of the work, he requested my father if he could. I have a huge library, so he asked for his wife likes to read, so if he could have a book or two. So I promptly gave away 2 of my books, Hindi books. So it was also very strange. It was related to patriarchy and Nari Shakti. Compiled stories. So that's what I would be reciting now. A Tale of Two Distinct Worlds. As the orange yellowish glow signals the retreat of the sun for the day, I have often observed some on bicycles, some walking briskly, the migrant laborers in my Sorry. It's the women that I closely observe, following their husbands one step behind. And yes, I am reminded of her, the one I gave away my books to. I've always felt I shared more affinities with her, having to leave our homes to go to another city. But it's far from reality. Here she is in a new town, with a new life, married off before she could even realize or fathom the mechanisms of her own body, laboring to create a new world in a small cloistered room with no outlet for smoke or ideas. I realize with pain how distinct we are. Just like some of the tallest branches of tree grow towards the sun while others are crooked and bent downwards. She had to neatly fold her dreams, store them safely inside her bosom. Does she hope they'd ever blossom? As I roam freely in my own hometown, I've often observed migrant laborers standing near the main plaza every morning, with timid women holding bags of hopes on one side, eager to find employment even if it's for a single day. I wonder if I can recognize her, the one I never knew. A fool's hope, you might remark. But readers and book lovers can connect somehow. Yes, reading is an affinity that we share. Surely, those books would have changed her worldview, remembering me, the one she never knew. Probably consuming books by now. Reading and buying books is also a privilege. I'm humbly reminded of the fact she might be nursing an infant or breaking her back for some landlords, laying stone for a smart city project. What became of those books, I ponder? Are those pages getting soiled with the oil leaking from packed food, or crumbling under the pressure of a married life, or serving as a fuel in the hearth, reduced to ashes like her former self? A sobering fact. We are much different than I thought. But one affinity we share is the strongest of them all, and it is we both are women. So, thank you.
Such a poignant narrative, and also the intersectional vulnerabilities, and you're being sensitive and responsive to the privileges that we as middle class women have and the vulnerability that a woman has. Very, very powerful. Excellent.
Any suggestions for the research?
You should get it translated into Hindi also. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Now we'll go back to Riya ji. We'll be presenting your presentation. So Priyanka ji, if you could please do that. Thank you.
Before it begins, I would like to add some introduction to it. So good evening, everyone. My name is Riya Pandey, and I am a second-year student of Economics Honors at Delhi University. And the theme that I've chosen for the research is refugee rights and humanitarian interventions, as I found it to be something that is very crucial and complex, and it involves legal, moral, and even practical aspects. And India is also one of the largest host countries for refugees in Asia, but currently it does not have any specific law or policy for their protection and assistance. So for this purpose of a creative presentation, I have decided I chose the medium of narration of a short film called Little Terrorist. So please go ahead with that video. Thank you. The audio isn't being
Right.
heard.
Priyanka, start from start. Yeah. Unmute yourself, Priyanka.
Okay, sir.
If you'll unmute, then voice will come. Starting say, yeah.
It's still not audible.
Is it still not audible? Okay, let me see. I'll stop and start sharing
Check
again.
the volume also.
Yes, ma'am. I'll just see. Yes, ma'am. See. Let me know if you hear this thing. Did you get the audio?
No,
No, not even now.
Try from another media player.
Okay. Okay.
Of refugee rights and humanitarian. Indian movie that explores the theme of refugee rights and humanitarian interventions through the lens of a young boy caught between the borders of India and Pakistan. Little Terrorist is a 2004 short film directed by Ashwin Kumar. The story follows Jamal, a 10-year-old Pakistani boy who accidentally crosses the border into India while chasing his cricket ball. The film is inspired by the true story of a Pakistani boy who crossed the border into India and was sheltered by a Hindu family. In the film, Jamal's predicament highlights the challenges faced by refugees and migrants, especially children who are often subject to crossfire of political conflicts and border disputes. Despite his innocent intentions, Jamal is perceived as a threat by Indian authorities and is forced to seek refuge in a nearby village. Through Jamal's journey, the film intertwines into basic human rights, emphasizing the right to freedom of movement and the right to seek asylum. It sheds light on the importance of exercising these rights even in the face of adversity and challenges societal perceptions of refugees as terrorists or threats to national security. As Jamal forms an unlikely bond with a Hindu villager named Bhola, the film underscores the universal values of compassion, empathy, and solidarity transcending religious and cultural divides. Bhola's willingness to help Jamal despite the prevailing tensions between the two countries exemplifies the power of human connection and the potential for positive change in a conflict ridden region. The film shows how Jamal and Bhola share a common passion for cricket and how they bond over their humanity and compassion. The film highlights the human rights issues faced by refugees, such as the right to life, liberty, security, and protection from violence and persecution. It also challenges and opportunities of humanitarian interventions, such as the role of individuals, communities, and authorities in helping or hindering the refugees. The director Ashwin Kumar is an Indian filmmaker who is known for his independent and unconventional approach to filmmaking and his focus on social and political issues. He was nominated for an Academy Award for Little Terrorist and was also honored by the Indian government with the National Film Award. The film deals with the themes of cross border relations, conflict, and displacement between India and Pakistan. Little Terrorist differs from other works based on these themes in its short and simple format, its realistic and minimalist style, and its positive and hopeful message. The film draws on the real life incident of a 10-year-old Pakistani boy named Jamal who crossed the border while playing cricket and was returned to his family by the Indian Border Security Force in 2003. The film fictionalizes some of the details and characters of the incident and adds a humanistic and artistic touch to the story. In conclusion, Little Terrorist serves as a poignant reminder of the need for compassion and understanding in addressing the plight of refugees and migrants. By highlighting the importance of basic human rights and advocating for humanitarian interventions, the film inspires viewers to challenge stereotypes, promote empathy, and work towards creating a more inclusive and compassionate world. It is a film that deserves to be seen and discussed. Thank you. Indian movie that explores the theme of refugee. Indian. Thank you so much for that video. And coming to the research part, I would like to highlight on the part of Pakistani refugees that are currently stationed in India. I would some of the sections that will be included in my essay are like the overview of refugee movements in South Asia, with that history of Pakistani refuge in India. Then I will also attack the legal and policy framework that means India's approach to refugee protection. And I will also highlight one or two case studies of interventions for Pakistani refugees and the legal status and rights, or majorly the challenges faced by the Pakistani refugees, and with a hint of a special focus on women. Um, and then also the gender and vulnerable groups, majorly children and women. And then I will also highlight the influence of India and Pakistan's bilateral relations on the refugee status, that is the diplomatic interventions. And then I will try to evaluate the current policies and recommend something that needs to be taken care of for refugee rights and interventions. So, ma'am, anything that you would like to suggest?
Was a girl who was physically challenged and she was lost in Pakistan territory, and the processes that were involved. And I think Madam Sushma Swaraj personally took responsibility of bringing her back. So I think both the sides, if you show, no, then it would have give a balanced picture. And it's not a question of attacking the law. It is critically reflecting on law and suggesting what kind of amendments we can make. Because the language that you use, no, attack immediately puts you in a very this problematic area. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I'll take care of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So with this, we come to an end of our presentations for today. First and foremost, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to all the participant teams who have poured their time, effort, and creativity into making this event a success. Each team brought a unique perspective, creativity, and enthusiasm to the table, enriching our experience and inspiring us all. Your hard work has truly made a difference, and we are immensely grateful for your participation. Thank you so much to all the participant teams. And thank you so much to our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel, ma'am, for giving us such prompt suggestions and recommendations about how all of us can better our research. Thank you so much, ma'am. Additionally, you can also submit a blog article for IMPRI Insight blog based on your presentation. The guidelines for the same can be found on our website. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, would you have any closing chair remarks? Ma'am, you're not audible.
So in my closing remarks, I would just like to summarize that Professor Samjukta, she also brought in some of the very important aspects of women in diplomacy, because gone are the days when women in diplomacy and policy-making bodies had to be only seen, not to be heard. Gone are the days when women in decision-making bodies tried to voice their opinion. Whenever they tried to speak, they were asked to make coffee and bring sandwiches for their male colleagues. It was on 8th March 1975, the UN Declaration of International Women's Day, that popularized the slogan, "I don't make coffee, I make policy." I think Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya also showed historically how women have made essential contributions to diplomacy and international relations when they have a seat at the table. The negotiations concerning Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the example she gave about women's contribution in peacemaking, peace building, peacekeeping in Liberia, or even in the Irish peace processes, are glorious examples of fundamental roles women have played in achieving long-lasting success. Women's equal participation and representation at all levels of decision-making are key to unlocking the transformational changes that needed to secure sustainable future. Dr. Nivedita Haran made convincing case in favor of women's engagement in evidence-based policy processes through action, through research, through data generation, and through making the policies far more substantive and targeted, and more inclusive decisions which are made, and also different voices which are there in a bottom-up approach, and the solutions that are created by interacting with the community. So I think governments function better, the corruption decreases, and peace processes improve when women in public positions have a mandated power. So without inputs of half the world's population, we cannot develop policies that work for everyone. And I think that also came out from our participants' presentation, such a serious, well-researched, sensitive, and perceptive presentations they have made, whether through their paper, that is PowerPoint presentations, or films, or poetry that has captured such complex topics in a extremely with gender responsiveness, and also which has a very tremendous power of words, power of imagining, and power of creative expressions that you have shown. I congratulate all the participants who have made their presentation in such a short time, like you are given only 5 minutes, but still you could put your convey your message across. That is a really excellent exercise for any person in public domain, because when you attend the international conferences for representation of whole country's problem, you get 5 minutes, okay, in the UN meeting, because there are 200 representatives, 200 countries which are sending their representatives. So this is a very good exercise of encapsulating the highlights of your research that you have put in for last 1 month. Thank you very much. And thank you now. Yes, thank you, Ruth, for conducting the session so very well. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Just a little announcement. Ending gender-based violence cohort 2 will be starting on Tuesday. And if anyone present here is interested in the course, you can avail special discounted rates if you contact us soon. So please contact the IMPRI team through email for the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, yes, Pallavi, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, just wanted to thank and thanks for putting all this together. And I don't know, another set of workshops we'll be really looking forward to it. And I think for even more nuanced understanding, I think this thing has to go on. I mean, you've done a wonderful initiative and it definitely should not stop here.
Yeah.
And we really look forward to being a part again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Pallavi.
Thank you so much.
On 8th, no? All of us are meeting on 8th for this 8th of March, for this course. Yeah. Then also remaining presentations we'll take up on that. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I have also shared the link for the course will be starting on Tuesday. You can go through that.
Yeah.
Okay. As we come to an end of day 9 of Young Women Leaders in Public Policy Fellowship, an online national winter school program, a 2-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship, I, Reetlath, researcher, IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center. We are extremely grateful to our experts for day 9, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, Professor Sangjukta Bhattacharya ji, and Dr. Niveta P. Haran ji, for taking out their valuable time and giving us an opportunity to learn from this online certificate program. We thank all the participants who gave a very creative and interesting presentations and participated in today's deliberation. Reading for the session have been shared in your email, and a video of the session will also be shared for your learning. We look forward to welcoming you for our last day of this certificate course on 8th March 2024 at 3 p.m. We are grateful if you're watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join in future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you a very good evening. Thank you, everyone.